All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started here just for the sake of time. Thanks so much for tuning in to another SDR Office Hours. This is our second edition here. Just want to give a huge thank you to Vince and Risa for making some time today just to share a little bit more about their expertise, what's been working for them as we continue to push forward in a global pandemic. Without further ado, we have a couple of housekeeping items for you guys. First off, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box if you already haven't done so. All the participants are actually in listen-only mode right now. Feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box, which is specifically down in the bottom. Try not to get it confused with the chat box because we don't want to miss any of your questions out there. And this is being recorded. And let us know what you guys like, what you don't like towards the end. But without further ado, just want to give a huge thank you to our speakers. Again, they are experts in what they do, fantastic SDRs, AEs, and you'll see a little bit more about what makes them truly phenomenal. So Risa Khamsi is actually an SDR over at LeadIQ. She just started her journey about 3 months ago, and she's absolutely crushing it, having hit over 100% quota, and actually has quite an array of experiences before she became an SDR as well. We'll turn over to my boy Vincent Matano here, who is actually an AE over at Demandbase. Transitioned from the SDR role to the AE role within 20 months. He also is the host of his own podcast, 3-time SDR of the Year award winner, and he even met Gary Vee himself. So we'll kind of dive deeper into that a little bit later. A little bit about myself. I've been in sales development for 2+ years now in multiple sectors such as EdTech, SMB, HR Tech. I'm a current SDR at Book Nook. I'm also the host of the Sales Dip Squad podcast. I love to create content, and I might share a few puns here as well, so fair warning. And basically the objective of our webinar today is to share insights to help SDRs gain tactical prospecting tips to help cut through the noise and leverage their full creativity. If there's anything that you can take away from this webinar is a different perspective. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and kick it off with our first question. We'll start with Vince here. Vince, do you mind just sharing a little bit more about, what channels you are most confident in and why? An example of a channel could be video, phone, email, social, you name it. I guess what do you feel like is your big strong suit here?
Yeah, well, first off, Mateo, really excited about this. Appreciate you having me on here. I would say the channel I'm most confident in, and I think there needs to be an approach for leveraging multi-channel approach. I think that's where you're going to see the most success. But if I had to simply just choose one channel, it would definitely be email. For me, specifically as an SDR, I saw tons of success in crafting personalized emails. I actually rarely phone wasn't really too much of part of my cadence as an SDR, which is like, some people aren't too happy when I say that, but I would say email is, for me, the most effective channel, easily.
Mm-hmm. Risa, I'll turn it over to you, I guess. I know you just started your journey not too long ago. Just from your short experience so far, is there anything that you tend to lean on a little bit more, or just something that you feel really confident in when you're having conversations?
Yeah, so far I feel like social has been the best channel for me. Like Vince, I don't want to say I don't enjoy cold calling because sometimes it can be fun, but I feel like I'm always kind of catching people at a bad time, and it is pretty tough to cold call people, especially lately. I think everyone's a little stressed out given the current climate with the pandemic and everything else going on. But that being said, I found the most success with social media posts, like with LinkedIn posts. I recently posted about cold calling Guy Fieri using LeadIQ, and that post has 20,000 views. And I had multiple directors of business development and sales managers personally message me and say, wow, this was amazing, offering me a job or just asking me more about LeadIQ. And I actually created a couple of opportunities just based on that one post. So I would say LinkedIn is my favorite.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I guess if I could add anything, I think email and social are definitely growing channels within sales development. If we think like ourselves, right, as consumers, I think our generation especially is very glued to these things right here. So just if we really think about what we enjoy as consumers and what we use on a daily basis, that gives us an avenue of maybe, some channels that our prospects or our customers might see the most convenient way to get in touch as well. But love it, you guys. I know this one's kind of a bit meatier one, but in this world, right, in 2020, especially as more companies are fully remote, we're leveraging the internet more than we've ever have before, especially with you two. Vin, I know you tend to reach out to a lot of marketers and salespeople. Risa, you tend to reach out to a lot of salespeople and marketers. And so this idea of content creation and branding is really just meeting your prospects where they're at. LinkedIn is obviously a very big business platform. So I'm curious, how has leveraging your brand and content creation helped you to connect with prospects or even just any networking opportunities? Risa, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you on this one.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think it stems back to even before I got hired as an SDR. I started creating YouTube videos on, cold calling techniques and KPIs, just anything tech sales related, and really started building a brand for myself because I knew that would be the best way to get myself noticed by a sales manager. And then in my role now, LeadIQ is really about being yourself, but being like kind of kooky and quirky and weird. So I've just ran with that. And I actually created a whole entire YouTube video to try and book a meeting with one of my accounts. And I kind of basically made fun of myself as a Californian and created this idea that I was using this company's tool to market myself and my kale business. So I've really focused, it's obviously like a joke, but I think people kind of appreciated that, the humor, and I'm really leveraging humor in my brand and how I post things and share things on LinkedIn as well.
It's awesome. Vin, yourself?
This is a really good topic. I actually think that this is a huge part for salespeople. And there's this current kind of topic where it's like, should the actual brand itself, should your company be posting on their own LinkedIn? I think the way that you create awareness for the company you work for is by the individual employees posting, creating their own content. For example, here at Demandbase, we acquired a company called Engagio, and in our space, that was like really, really big news in the ABM space. And I created a video, like a side-by-side. I don't know if you guys have seen the music video of Confessions by Usher. And I made a side-by-side of me calling Usher and telling him the news that we acquired Engagio. And that post, I think got about 20,000 views on it. And it was, it was a lot more than what our brand content generated. So I think the future of awareness on social lies within the employees at the company. And I think that's just the way the trend is going. So I think if the first thing to do is when you're starting off in a sales role is identify who your target market is, start adding the people you talk to, start engaging with their content, like Risa said, and start generating your own content to speak to that audience.
100%. Andy, thanks so much for hopping on here. I guess to kind of bounce some ideas back at y'all, I know that you tend to do a lot of marketing and content on LinkedIn specifically. Now, let's say that an ICP is outside of LinkedIn per se. For example, teachers, right? You don't really see too many educators or teachers or principals on LinkedIn per se, but they definitely are on Twitter and Facebook. How do you sort of know and really strategize a way to reach out to those people? And maybe if those prospects aren't on LinkedIn, do you think social and brand building and content creation is still something that is feasible and is something that should be attempted at least?
Well, in terms of LinkedIn, sure, you may not have teachers on LinkedIn, but I still think there's value in creating content that's related to your ed tech space, because what that's going to do is it's going to connect you to other individuals such as yourself that are in the ed tech space, and you guys are going to be sharing, generating ideas. Like, you can spend 15 minutes on LinkedIn if you have the right audience and your timeline is filtered to you. and you can learn so much just by spending some time on there. So I think there is value in creating content on LinkedIn still, regardless if your audience isn't there technically. You can still connect with like-minded individuals. And yeah, that might include you going to things like Twitter. That might include you using other channels. Maybe if you're creating your own content, you're just sending that to them via email or a handwritten note, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything you'd like to add on there, Risa?
Yeah, I would agree with Vince. I don't really sell to anyone other than, prospects who are in LinkedIn. But I definitely am a, user of Twitter in terms of like personalizing emails and finding that someone really loves Bruce Lee or Chinese
100%.
or whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like kind of what Vince alluded to, like you really have to understand who you're targeting. Reginald, I know we've chatted before. You tend to deal with a lot of property managers. So really just focusing on like, okay, I'm targeting property managers. What social media sites are they usually on? Are they on Twitter? Are they on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn? And kind of reverse engineering what could be helpful for them and kind of bringing it and meeting them where they're at. So hope that was helpful. Let's keep this moving a bit here. So just wanted to show briefly some examples of some cold emails, and we can kind of dive deeper into this. But Risa, do you mind sort of walking us through like your process when you're constructing a cold email or just any sort of cold messaging, what your process is around from start to finish?
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing I learned in boot camp, tech sales boot camp, was that a subject line that gets the most responses is generally 3 words or less. So I always try to keep my subject lines short. And I mean, I guess I have 5 words in that one email subject line, but generally I stick to 3 words. Try to keep it vague, but personalized, to the prospect in some way. I'm a big fan of using something about the person's last name, like looking up their last name meaning, or looking up something about their college that they went to if they're lacking in activity on their LinkedIn. And then, finding what alumni, like famous alumni that went to their school. I'll start out with something like that. And then I'll kind of, each of these emails you can see, I do like a clever transition. And then I get to the value prop. And then I like to end with a strong CTA. Sometimes throw in a note at the bottom, a little PS or a PPS is kind of nice for, making you seem more human. But yeah, I love puns as well. So, you can see in my flower mound email, I made sure to, I did some research on his town because it was really unique. I'd never heard of Flower Mound as a city. But then I kind of turned it into a pun and related it back to why I was reaching out.
And I guess how do you find all this information that you end up using in your email?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I really just rely mainly on Google and LinkedIn. Like those are the main 2 things. So, I saw on his LinkedIn that he lived in Flower Mound, and I was like, wow, that's really unique. So I just did a quick Google search and found, I did, Flower Mound fun facts and found some fun facts about it. That's a real good method. And then also I love looking at my prospects' activity on LinkedIn and try to comment on their posts instead of just like it. The way I booked a meeting recently was a prospect of mine had posted a picture of her dog. And it looked a lot like my dog. So I posted a picture of my dog in a comment and said, wow, Penny looks just like my dog, Rafi. And she emailed me back and booked a meeting instantly. And it's like a 600-person opportunity.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's incredible.
Chris, I actually really like your call to actions here. You mentioned before it was like a hard call to action. I actually think it's a soft call to action. And I think that's actually, I like it a lot because I would say like since COVID, everyone's like, lead with empathy and everyone's changing their like, does this time work to meet call to actions, which is a hard call to action, to like, is this something that's top of mind for you right now?
Yeah.
Actually, I might actually steal that kind of phrase. I like that.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Finn, it's your turn, man. I know this is kind of a little bit blurry, but this is something that you use over at the Sales Success Summit. Do you mind just walking us through like your process for cold emails? What has works for you? What sort of framework you like to stick to?
Yeah, so I recently presented on this. When I first started in the SDR role, I was personalizing a lot of my emails and seeing a lot of success with it. And this was a time when like cadences were really big. So like, creating these like really thought out, even somewhat automated cadences in like Outreach or SalesLoft. And I took a different approach where I was trying to focus on less quantity and focus on more personalization. And I was seeing a lot of success with this. So I tried to develop some sort of structure that would help me personalize all my emails going forward. And I created this like prospecting checklist that, it's not necessarily a physical list. However, it was a way for me to keep in line what to look for when prospecting. So one of the things the first thing I look for is something based off the individual or the person. And that really will help grab their attention. And you can find this as Risa mentioned, you can go on their LinkedIn, you can look on their Twitter, you can Google search their name. You can look at different podcasts they're featured on, etc. The second thing I look for is personalizing it based off the company. So whether that's something that is found in their 10K on their website, industry they sell into, new product release, etc., that's going to really tie relevancy to the conversation. And then the last thing I do is check my CRM, right? If there's previous sales conversations, maybe they attended a marketing event, that's going to be really important for me to mention because you're going to have different messaging if it's someone that's completely unaware of what your product or services do versus someone that's chatted with you guys in the past. So here I kind of put together an example of an email that got me a meeting on a first touch. Started off by congratulating them on their 100,000 customer, which was something that just happened. Used that to grab their attention, showed have done my research. Next paragraph, I went into just saying, this is why I'm reaching out. I mentioned some of the awards I found on his LinkedIn, and I even grabbed the stat from his LinkedIn. So like, whatever this is, yielding 50% decrease in CPL. I personalize it based off his role as the global ops manager. And then I even threw in something that's personal. He's like a musician and makes this electric music. So I threw that in there. So personalizing it based off the individual, company, and again, checking my CRM to see how familiar he is with Demandbase. And then something that I've recently been doing, kind of similar to Risa, is doing a more soft call to action. And I actually got this from Josh Braun, who is he is like a sales trainer, right? And he leaves off his emails with either way. And I think that's a nice way to kind of like softly leave it off. It's not pushy. It's not, it doesn't like force them into a meeting. I say either way, congrats on whatever I started my email with. So these first and last sentences are usually the same for me. And that's how recently I've been leaving off my emails with this either way sentence.
Now, a question for you both. How do you make sure that you're spending enough time finding this relevant information, but not spending too much time to the point where it could perhaps be a disadvantage for you as that time that you spend researching becomes an opportunity cost?
Yeah, I'll go first. I mean, that's a great question. And I struggle with that sometimes, spending like 15 minutes on an email because I want to make sure it's perfect. But what I try to do now is kind of take a look at how high value is this prospect, because I have, VPs. I generally go after VPs, managers, heads of sales, and then also individual contributors. So for like a manager of sales, that's probably my most high value prospect because they're likely the one that's actually managing sales tools. So with that type of person, I'll spend a little bit extra time on that extra personalization. But with VPs and ICs, I generally don't spend quite as much time because I know that they're probably not the right person to be speaking with anyway. So I just try to be strategic with my time.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Risa. However you're scoring or ranking accounts and contacts, I think that's valuable, whether you're using intent, whether you're using some kind of tech, or whether you're manually just ranking and scoring based on previous sales conversations or maybe technographics. I definitely kind of take the same approach. I think it gets easier the more you personalize emails and get into a little groove. So for me, it got easier for me over time when I kind of had this system in place where I was like, I know what to look for and I know where to look for it. In the beginning, I think, maybe I was kind of getting that analysis paralysis, as they call it. And I think sometimes I still do oftentimes. But one of the easiest things to do to personalize at scale is personalizing it based off the company. So you can create a snippet, personalize it based off the company. And if you're selling into enterprise companies, you may have to reach out to 6 people, let's say, right? You can use this snippet to those 6 individuals and maybe personalize the first sentence and the last sentence. That way it's really easy to personalize an email, and you have a custom snippet that you can send to 6 other people.
Vin, I know in your prospecting checklist here, you have CRM. What do you mean by CRM here?
Yeah, that's just, the simplest thing salespeople can do that we often don't do and forget, and I'm guilty of this as well, is just checking your CRM, checking the data that you guys have available. Like being able to look into a CRM, see if there's any closed lost opportunities, how long ago did they close? Why did they close? Was it competitive? Was it timing? Was it budget? Did the person get fired? I don't know, right? So those are the things you want to look at. Also, you want to understand if they've ever talked to a salesperson, if over email or cold call, or maybe they attended one of your most recent webinars. You can see often in the CRM what they were most interested in. Like for us, we sell about 4 or 5 different products. And for me, if I see they're constantly downloading particular content for one of our products or related to one of our products, I know my messaging is going to be related to that. And like I said earlier, if someone's completely unaware, there's 0 closed lost opportunities with you guys, you're probably going to have some different messaging just explaining what your product or service does versus someone that's went through maybe 3 evaluations of you guys. You probably won't really have to do a big job selling them. You just need to get their attention and kind of use a call to action to get the next meeting.
Yeah, and I just want to add something to what you just said, Vin, is that I've been recently pulling reports from Salesforce of clients that, well, not current clients, but potential clients that were closed lost a year ago. And then I pick the ones that were closed lost due to timing. And I basically just go after them and cater my messaging to them, hey, I saw that you were evaluating LeadIQ a year ago, but it wasn't the right time. Value prop, what makes us different now than a year ago as well, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing every SDR should do in a new patch or even new role company. That's the first thing they should do. That's the lowest hanging fruit. So that's a great strategy.
Yeah, and if you're using like SalesLoft and Outreach, I think it's easy for SDRs to just get in this habit of, okay, let me see how many calls I can get through. But again, that information, if your company has used SalesLoft and Outreach for years, since they've had that technology, you can reference all of the previous calls that SDRs have made to them. So great tips here around just thinking smarter, not harder, and tailoring your messaging to the current situation. So Vin, let's start with you. What exactly is multi-channel prospecting? How would you define what this is?
So multi-channel prospecting is probably the most important thing as an SDR. It's a way to use the technologies or channels that are available to us to get the attention of your prospect, to book a meeting or just have a conversation. So one of the most commonly used multi-channel approaches are the triple touch approach, which I'm sure literally everybody uses. It consists of sending an email, a LinkedIn email, and a voicemail. So that's the standard. I think Topo reported about 80% of companies use that. So that is a very common multi-channel approach. Now we have a lot more technologies to us, and you would think it's easier to get in touch with people, but that just really creates a lot more noise. One of the ways that I'm currently using a multi-channel approach is expanding upon that triple touch and using things like video, which I know a lot of people are using, Twitter, as well as direct mail.
Nice. Risa, do you mind just sharing just sort of the process that you have and what sort of different channels you sort of leverage within your outreach?
Yeah, definitely. So I was kind of just relying on emails, calls, and LinkedIn messages previous to this new sequence that we just got. But this new sequence that we're doing in outreach includes at a certain point, if you haven't heard from your prospect, sending them an email saying, hey, I know this is a big faux pas and kind of annoying, but, and then like why you're reaching out again. And it's really interesting. I thought that it wouldn't be that effective, but a lot of people have replied to that. They'll end up approving my connection request and then messaging me in the regular LinkedIn Messenger. And I've been getting traction doing that. So I think just taking advantage of all of the paths of communication is key.
Are there any particular channels that you feel aren't as used as much as they should?
Twitter is the most underused channel that I think there is. I've been like I've been using Twitter for a while now. It's like, besides all the information that lives there to personalize emails or cold calls, like that's the first thing that you would look at. But I've also been using Twitter to send messages. I don't really try to sell over Twitter. I just use it. I drop it like a voicemail. Like I'll just send them a quick tweet mentioning my email. I like sending videos over Twitter because it actually shows a thumbnail and it'll play. There's less noise. It's easier to get directly to your contact if they are on Twitter. Not everyone's on Twitter. And that's, for me, that's the most underutilized channel.
Yeah, I don't use Twitter so much, but I have been doing something where I've been sending a video message to prospect directly in a LinkedIn message if they approve my connection request. I did that with a prospect who was ghosting me pretty recently, and then just sent him a video message asking if we could connect, and he responded right away. So I think that's another way to be strategic.
Risa, what are you guys using for video?
We're using Drift. Yeah, I like Drift, but I've also used Vidyard, and I don't want to say one is better than the other, but I like the quality of Vidyard a little bit better, but then Drift has like a feature where you can make like a GIF or a GIF. I don't know how to
Thumbnail, right? The little.
Yeah.
No, it's a moving GIF. Yeah, it's a GIF.
Yeah. So that's a nice feature because sometimes I'll just go to the company's website, click on have another tab open with the prospect and zoom in on their photo, and I just like switch back and forth between tabs, and that's my my GIF, and that's been a nice way to get people to click on the video.
That's cool. So you recorded in Drift and then upload the link in an InMail or something, you're saying?
Yeah, and then I have to record like a GIF separately.
Gotcha.
And I believe Drift is a free tool, if I'm not mistaken. I think your company might have purchased it, but I believe if for anyone out there listening, it is a free tool that you could get for yourself. So
one of the biggest things off this topic, really quick, I'm sorry.
No,
whenever you would try to use like a Drift or Vidyard in an email, the thumbnail would never show for me. But that's interesting. I never thought to use it for LinkedIn, because in LinkedIn, you're saying that the thumbnail shows or it just comes up as a link?
For me, the thumbnail shows.
In LinkedIn. Okay. I never tried that. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Have you used the direct video app within LinkedIn? Has that been successful for you at all?
I
haven't tried it.
All good. Just leaving that out there. Let's keep this going here. So I think something that's really important for any SDR out there is to really practice brevity, just being really concise with your words. I think if we really think about, what most SDRs do, or what most SDRs are taught to do, is to write these super long emails with all of these product features and links and calls to action and social proof, which is all important, of course, but just leveraging the least amount of words possible to get your message across, I feel is really the core of sales and the art of communication. And so I just wanted to just share briefly, and Risa and Vin, you can kind of elaborate. Something that's worked really well for me is leveraging what I call email bumps. So, after you send an email and you don't get a reply, you can actually just follow up to that email. So you could just hit reply and just simply writing 2 words, any thoughts, or just keeping it really simple. And I think this is something that isn't really use as often. That should be. But again, it's just following up with people, keeping it really simple. As you can see here, I wasn't able to book a meeting, and she did call me Miss Mateo, which is a different problem. But I think the idea and interesting thing here is if we can at least get replies, a reply is always better than being ghosted. I'm sure you both can attest. But I guess, do you mind just sharing your thoughts if you've ever dabbled into email bumps or just this idea around brevity, right? Keeping it super simple to the point where it stands out because it's super simple.
Yeah. So for me, I just started recently doing this in my sequences. If I don't get a reply for a couple days, I send a message, another email with the subject line relating back to the original one, and just a one-liner, just saying, "Hey, so and so, did you get a chance to read my last email?" And that's actually been working really well at getting a response. Another thing that I have been doing, I have this one prospect who I've been trying to get a hold of for the longest time. It's the same prospect who he sent my email to his entire team, and it got opened 174 times because I sent him like a Britney Spears themed music video. Anyway, that was like a lot of effort. And then I was like, okay, I can't do this every time. So what can I send as a follow-up? And so I sent him basically, "Hi, so-and-so, how can I earn 15 minutes of your time?" And then just put like a PS and a PPS and a PPPS, but that was it. Like there wasn't really much in it. And even that email got opened like 30 times. So I think that keeping it short and sweet can really be effective sometimes.
Yeah, I honestly haven't been doing this too much. I will reply to an email if it got a lot of hits, as Risa mentioned. So if I send a really custom email and it got opened a ton, like I can tell they forwarded it to their team, I will come over the top of that email, and usually just try to continue the personalization. But at that point, sometimes it's like if they didn't respond to this one, like So yeah, I haven't been doing too much of the short bumps. As an AE though, in the sales process, the sales cycles can be quite long, and oftentimes there could be times where there'll be a stretch period of time where you don't hear back from your prospect if you don't have something locked on the calendar. And this is where I kind of turn to this during the sales process. I'll send them a short note on like, "Hey, did I miss a step, or is this not a priority anymore?" A quick one like that. But for top of the funnel activities, I haven't actually tried this too much.
Yeah, just some thoughts here, and again, just this idea of brevity, just being really simple and concise with your message. People are really busy, especially right now, so just really the game is in the follow-up, and I'm sure you both can attest.
Yeah.
So before we get started, we have some really fun examples to share with you today, and I think really at the core of what sales is turning into is a game of thinking outside the box, right? I think most sales reps are really generic, which is maybe not their fault, right? That's probably how they were taught and what's sort of the framework in which they're allowed to operate. But I think what Risa and Vin do really well is just being creative, having fun with it, and not sticking to the black and white sort of approach with sales. And so I have a few examples that I think will really bring a smile to your face. Risa, do you mind sharing a little bit more about the inspiration behind your Britney Spears video and what the turnout was for that one?
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know, I was just feeling kind of zazzy, and I had a Britney Spears song stuck in my head. So I went and found the karaoke version on YouTube and wrote some lyrics, just real quick, just some lyrics like that basically ended with saying, "Won't you email me back one more time?" And I, did the Britney Spears "Hit Me Baby One More Time" look, like I did the pigtails, and I had like a button down on, and I just like went for it. Thanks, Victoria. Yeah, so I just really went for it and had fun with it, and they loved it because it's like the entire company is like 200 people, and 174 people open the email, and most of them watch the video. So that was really fun to do, and fun to get that reaction as well.
How did you think, like, okay, this was the idea that I wanted to stick to and follow through with that idea?
Yeah, it was kind of honestly just like a spur of the moment type of thing. I didn't really think too hard about it, because I feel like with these things, like you can't dedicate like 2 hours to creating one video for a prospect. But this video really only took me like 15 minutes total to do. And it was just kind of a thought that popped into my head. So I would say, if you do think of something, even if it seems wacky and wild, just go for it. Like, why not? Like, what do you have to lose, really,
Yeah, imagine if you didn't do this one. That would have been nuts. Vin, I'll turn it over to you. This was an amazing video. I guess, share with us what is in your hand and what was the inspiration behind this?
So this video is literally from today. As you can tell, I'm wearing the same exact outfit that Mateo just screenshotted off my Twitter. So that's my desk plant that I rescued from the office, drove back into the city to get the desk plant.
Okay.
I have this account, Sprout Social, and their logo is a little sprout. It looks like exactly like this plant, actually. And I've been trying to break into this account for a really long time. And I've chatted with some people, but never really got deep into the account, never really talked to a decision maker. Kind of hitting a wall. I know we've all been there where you like hit a wall with an account. So I had an idea to, I came up with a video basically saying that my desk plant, I named it Sprout Social, and I was pouring different cups of water into it that were labeled with things that Demandbase can help with. And my messaging was basically saying that, like, this is how I keep my plant to grow. And this is also how, Demandbase can help Sprout Social grow as an organization. So put that together and just tweeted it to the Twitter page, Sprout Social, no one in particular, because they are actually a social engagement platform. So I know they're going to see this if they use their own tech. And I actually got a hit up on LinkedIn, different channel, posted this on Twitter, from a guy on LinkedIn. And he said that he was just giving me kudos on the video and that the video is circulating at Sprout Social. So I just sent this today. So I'm going to be following up with my prospects either tomorrow or the following day with some like actual emails with a value prop and call to action in it. So we'll see how that goes. TBD, I should say.
And Vin, how long did it take you to like come up with this idea, record the video, all the way to like post, I guess? How long was that process?
I mean, I actually don't use Vidyard or Drift. I think we have a license to Drift, and we had a license to Vidyard. I don't think we do anymore. I personally, I just don't, the thing with the thumbnail throws me off for whatever reason. It doesn't work for me. So I just found it a lot easier just to record things on my phone and just send it that way. That way my face is shown. So as you can see, the video is 1 minute and 43 seconds. So it took me 1 minute and 43 seconds. And then I just tweeted it from my cell phone.
And this is a fun way to interact that isn't you cold calling and spitting some generic script at them. It's truly just leveraging your creativity, which I really love.
Yeah, and I think this also goes back to like that multi-channeled approach. Like even in Risa's example, like yes, she sent a video, but she's also following up via email. I'm assuming she probably followed up over the phone on a voicemail and mentioning this video that she'd put together. So I think the main thing to remember is like, yes, you can create one video for one channel, but they have to kind of align. So for me, I created a video, that's one channel. I tweeted it to him, that's 2 channels. I'm not really asking for a meeting. I didn't even tweet it at any person in particular, but in my follow-up, I'm going to be mentioning that in my emails going forward now to my prospects. So it really just ties together with that multi-channeled approach.
So I want to get y'all's thoughts on something that I've been doing. So I learn a lot from these two. And so here are just some examples of some outreach that I've done. So really big on Twitter because of Vin. So I think it's really important to establish yourself as an influencer and someone who could be a credible resource in your space. So I'm in the edtech space. So I really just try to, depict myself as an edtech resource, and I have been posting weekly edtech tips on my Twitter and Facebook. As you can see here to the left, this was actually a video that I created for Halloween, showing teachers how to create Halloween theme slides in Google Slides. And I know Vin mentioned earlier, Josh Braun, really good sales trainer. His approach and his mindset with sales is, how can you give before you take? And I think the really interesting part about content creation is, A, it's helping you cut through the noise and you're not just a generic SDR or AE cold calling and regurgitating some script. But B, you're providing a resource, whether that's something that they can send to their teachers or something that they laugh at, or just any capacity. I think, especially with your examples here, like this is a treat. Like this is something that's almost as sweet as chocolate and probably made a lot of people's days. And so if we really think about the future of sales, I really think it's headed in this direction where creativity is the most valuable asset as it pertains to individual sales reps. But I just wanted to relay everyone in our webinar here to just get their questions ready. We're going to be hopping into Q&A in just a few questions here. But this is kind of a controversial one, and I don't think there is a wrong or correct answer here. But I know our webinar really focused today on this idea of content creation, being more visible on digital, doing a lot more research. And if we really think about at its core what a cold call is reaching out to someone whom you've never had a conversation before, and this is the first time you're finally engaging with that person, and through this 5-minute conversation you hope to accomplish something. And so I definitely have a perspective on this, but I just wanted to hear from both of you, because I don't think there is a wrong answer. I think it's really whatever you feel comfortable with. But Vin, I know you're really passionate on this subject. What are your thoughts on the future of cold calls? Are they dying? Will they be dead? Or what are cold calls' destiny?
So yeah, obviously this depends on your industry, right? If you're selling, like if you're a real estate agent, like obviously cold calling is not dead. In the world of B2B enterprise sales, I'm on the team of cold calling is dead. The way in which salespeople are currently using phones is to use as within their multi-channel approach. And the way in which they're doing that is by leaving voicemails, about 60 seconds worth, and redirecting their attention back to the email. So for me, the email is the main hub. That's going to be the most effective channel where you reach all of your prospects directly. And you may use a video like Risa, you may use Twitter, you may use a voicemail, but really what you're doing is just redirecting their attention back to your email. So I don't, if you gave a salesperson a phone and you gave another one an email and they can only use those two channels, the one with the email will certainly outperform the one with the phone for sure.
Now, Risa, I know you've had a different experience, especially as of recent. And I feel like this idea of a cold call, like how cold are we talking here, I guess? Now, I know you've had a lot of success on the phones. Would love to hear your perspective on, what your thoughts are on cold calls or just the phone in general, perhaps.
Yeah, so I actually agree with Vin. I feel like using email is definitely going to outperform someone who's cold calling because people just, I think in general, don't like being caught off guard or put on the spot. So it's tough, but you can also do so much more with an email, like really outline why you're reaching out, what you're reaching out about, and etc. But that being said, I probably book 75% of my meetings with email and 25% of them with cold calls. So for me, I'm still booking meetings with cold calls. I got someone on the phone today who, is one of my only call connects, but he said, wow, I can't believe you're cold calling. Like, I hardly get these anymore. That's really cool. Like, I'm definitely gonna open your email and like consider it because I'm just glad you're cold calling me, like kudos. So I couldn't even believe he said that, but he was excited that I was cold calling him. So I think there is a place for it. I booked a couple of meetings last week with cold calls, but it was kind of more of a process of me calling them multiple times. And then like the third time got them on the phone, it was the right time and we were able to do it. But yeah, I think it just depends on what you're selling and how you're selling it, and lots of other factors.
Yeah, and I don't want to incentivize anyone out there just like to stop doing cold calls completely. And your manager is saying like, "Hey, like why aren't you cold calling? Oh, well, SDR office hour." No, like really, that's not the intent here. I think really, again, the idea is to just shed an alternative perspective and how can you turn those cold calls into warm calls? Is it through creating content? Is it through sending tailored emails? So really just changing your mindset to okay, this person is really cold. What are some actionable steps that I can take to warm up that call? So when I'm calling, I'm not a complete stranger. They've opened 5 of my emails. I sent them a few tailored tweets, and I'm sure that's a process that both, I guess, tend to leverage a lot.
Yeah.
Just wanted to kind of finish it off here with a really important question. I think most SDRs, their end goal is to move into some sort of closing role. And obviously the SDR role is sort of the first step in that journey. And I think Risa is definitely on her way to being an enterprise AE one day. But Vin, I know you've had, I guess, a firsthand experience being an SDR for quite some time and now moving into a full cycle AE role where you actually do some prospecting yourself. Do you mind just sharing a bit more about what that journey was like? And for anyone listening that really wants to push for that AE role, what they can do to help accelerate that?
Yeah. The main thing obviously is making sure you're consistently hitting your number, showing the team that you can perform. But not just that, it's like, what can you do outside of the organization? Like, are you doing a good job, branding yourself outside, on social platforms? Are you doing things like, and I think this, even in Rissa's situation where she's selling to salespeople using the actual platform that she uses day to day is what she sells. I'm sure there's scenarios where you can get some at bats. That's going to be huge, like to show management that, hey, just because I'm an SDR, I've actually ran X amount of calls. Make sure you have numbers on everything. That's going to be really powerful. And then just sitting down with AEs and asking them about their day to day. What can you do to get to that point? And don't forget that you came from an SDR. Like a lot of people that get promoted, from an SDR, they think that they can stop prospecting. I think that's one of the most powerful tools you can have because, Mateo, you and I were talking about this, but like the new age of sellers are going to be SDR graduates, right? You're going to be a minority if you're an AE that never was an SDR before, right? It's going to be a very small number of people. So I think the new age of AEs are going to be prospecting forward. And if they can kind of own their own pipeline and then close like an AE, they're going to be a really successful salesperson, not having to rely on an SDR. And obviously, whatever the SDR gets you as something extra would be great. But I think being able to own your own territory, your own pipeline, prospecting to your own accounts, and then being able to close like an AE, maybe learning from some of the more senior reps, sitting down with them and actually honing those skills that we need to learn.
Yeah, 100%. Risa, I know you're in a very interesting spot and you've already crushed your quota the past quarter in a pandemic, which is insane. But could you provide some of your insight from your perspective, where you're at right now, what you're trying to do and what you're hoping to accomplish? Is the AE role something that you're really striving for? And how have you had so much success within the past 3 months?
Yeah, so I definitely am striving for the AE role, but really focused on the present and learning everything that I can now. I feel like I'm still learning something new literally every day. So I think I'm not trying to rush it in a sense, but would probably like to be promoted ideally within a couple years at the most. But yeah, I'm really grateful for what I'm doing now because I do spend so much time coming up with creative ways to reach out to people. And I feel like, yeah, when I'm an AE, I won't be doing that as much because I'll be in more meetings, which will be fun too, I imagine. But I'm just trying to enjoy it right now, what I'm doing now. And also, our company has a sit-in on AE handoff meetings. So we do the intro, and then I guess generally people used to kind of jump But now we're required to sit in on the meetings. But I thought it was kind of a bother at first, and now I'm realizing it's really useful to see how, you know, account executives go through the meeting, and yeah, I'm learning a lot from that. So I'm just trying to be grateful for everything I'm learning and be in the present moment.
Absolutely. I guess some closing remarks here before we head into our brief Q&A. For anyone listening out there who wants to take this first step into their sales journey, SDR journey, you know, from what you've experienced so far, what advice do you have for someone who's sort of embarking on that first step?
I would just make sure that you're reaching out to the right people. So, for example, if you want to go into an AE role, reach out to your boss, your SDR manager. Reach out to the sales manager for the AE team. Let them both know that that's something you're working towards. And again, as Rissa said, be patient. You don't want to like say like, hey, I deserve this. You want to just let them know that, hey, when the opportunity happens, I want to throw my hat in the ring, right? So let them know, sit down with them and ask them what needs to be done to get to that point, and they'll outline some things that need to be done and make sure you execute on them.
100%. Risa?
Yeah, I would just second that. I mean, I know Vin would know better than me. Yeah, just trying to learn everything I can now, and then when I'm ready to move up, you know, really communicate that to my managers.
Thank you so much. Let's head into our Q&A here. Would love to just leave the floor open for any of our attendees here to ask our wonderful panelists some questions if you have any questions here.
While we're waiting, Mateo, I have to ask you about that turkey costume.
Yeah, it's actually pajamas, like a onesie. I think Target sells them, but yeah, it's just easy, right? You just like throw it on. I've actually caught myself wearing that in some mornings prospecting just because it's really comfy, and remote work is not really demanding of clothes outside of pajamas. So
I have a question. I have a question for Rissa. When you create these videos, because video is something that like I kind of got away from. I'm trying to get back into. When you create the video, if you're putting a lot of time into one video, are you using that video? Are you making it specifically for one person, or are you personalizing it maybe based off the company where you can kind of use that video in 3 other emails? Or are you just saying I'm making one video for one person? What's your kind of workflow there?
Yeah, I think pretty much the only types of videos I've been making have been just personalized to that person. And I make that clear with the whiteboard action, you know, writing their name on there. I just feel like it's more effective than just sending out like a generic video or recycling. A video definitely would be more, you know, ideal to be able to use that over and over. But I feel like it's just more fun for the person on the receiving end, and makes them more likely to reply if they, you know, if it's really a video made exactly for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
So it looks like we got a question from Reginald. What was your first closed experience? Are you referring to like a closed one, Reginald? Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I started in the AE role in the beginning of February, and I actually took over like a dead patch, so there wasn't anything existing that I could really take over. So I really was just hitting the ground running with prospecting. My first closed deal happened in April. So I don't know how many months is that? 3 months? February, March, April. Yeah, 3 months. That one actually came in inbound, luckily, and it was
Nice.
a competitive deal. And it was like a really challenging deal because I was remote and I just moved into the role. So it was like, you know, I wanted some like management presence on my calls because I was so new, and it was definitely really challenging. But like they're like my favorite customers. Like I'm like texting basis with them, and it was pretty challenging, but I definitely learned a lot from it.
Yeah, so my first closed one deal was also about 3 months that it took. But that wasn't from me actually getting them to respond. But I had been going after them since I started working at LeadIQ. And then I finally got in touch with one of the SDRs that worked at this company. And we kind of did our own qualification call. And he actually kind of told me, I don't think it's a good fit, or I don't think the timing is right. And I was like, okay, that's fair. I mean, your team. But then I decided to just keep going after his manager, and finally got him into a meeting, and they became closed one a couple of weeks later. So
Nice.
I think it's a good lesson too. And like, just because you hear a no from one person at the company doesn't mean it's necessarily like a full no.
100%. Looks like we got a question from Tori here. What was the best SDR tactic someone has shared with you, email or cold call?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. I'm trying to think of a. Honestly, yeah, go ahead, take that, please.
So the first thing that comes to mind is my mentor. I don't know if you guys have heard of the cloud security singer. She sings about cloud security. She sings and plays guitar. Well, she used to. Now she's a director of marketing, but she became a director of marketing in 2.5 years because she was a kick-ass SDR and then AE. And she just created like YouTube videos, and she branded herself. She shared the videos on LinkedIn. She tweeted them, and she had like over 200,000 views on her cloud security videos on LinkedIn. She started getting invited to conferences, and she would sing. Like, you can literally search for Kate, the cloud security singer, and you're going to find a whole lot of stuff. And she's got a great voice. She plays guitar really well. I think that's probably like the most amazing prospecting I've ever personally seen. So yeah.
This is awesome.
I got a funny one,
I was just
actually.
gonna
Go
say,
ahead.
I was just gonna say the influencers on LinkedIn that I enjoy, Josh Braun, the Morgan Ingrams of the world, which I'm sure everyone follows.
Yeah.
I got a really funny one, actually. I don't know if anyone has come across Justin Michael on LinkedIn, but he is like, I guess he has like a large family tie to like science, and like he has like a dad who was like a microphysicist or something, and he literally uses Venn diagrams in his sales outreach, because he said he watched like a 2-hour presentation. At the end of the presentation, it had everything that the slide talked about in a Venn diagram, and he's like, wow, like this is so visual. And so he literally just creates Venn diagrams, and he just sends the Venn diagrams to his prospects, like, like competitors, kind of comparing his product with competitor. It's like the weirdest thing you would have never expect to see, like a Venn diagram. Like, who would expect the Venn diagram, right? But it just interesting to see his approach with that. So I thought that would be interesting to share. But looks like Andy Benya has a question here. Any books that you recommend to share with his SDR team as a reference?
Yes. I'm trying to remember the name of this one book that I started. I'm reading like 3 books right now. One of the books that comes to mind is You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at
Sandler, right?
Yeah, I can't even like.
Yeah.
Too many
It's
books.
not. Yeah, it's a Sandler training book, right?
Yeah, so it's like a classic. But the best thing I learned from that book is learning that people buy emotionally. So like with that meeting that I booked with, sending a picture about my dog and talking about her dog, that was super emotional for both of us. And it was like a way for us to connect. And I feel like that's just the best way to, really sell.
I'm gonna add that one to my list. I think one of the books everybody should read is, which I'm sure it's a very How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's not necessarily a sales book, but I think it teaches a lot of good foundations of how to have conversations with people and create relationships. And then one of my favorite actual sales books is Never Split the Difference by Chris
Yes.
Voss. That's easily the best sales book out, I think.
Period. Vin, can you share briefly a little bit about your experience with the novel formerly known as, what is it? Jab, 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 right hook?
Yeah, so this is what Mateo was alluding to earlier before about Gary Vaynerchuk. So I had a prospect that I was trying to reach out to when I was an SDR, and I really just couldn't get a hold of him or anyone at the company for that matter. And again, hitting a wall with that account. I think I sent over 12 emails, like a few voicemails, and even Twitter Twitter messages. It didn't work. I saw he kept posting stuff about Gary Vee. So I actually had Gary Vee's book in my room, Jab, 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 Right Hook. I already read it, so I didn't really need it. So I just put it in a shipping envelope and actually sent it to him. And I then sent him another tweet by saying like, hey, I just saw you're a huge Gary Vee fan, so am I. Figured you may enjoy this book. Again, another touch point, and then I followed up via email. I wound up getting the meeting. He came in for lunch, and my AE wound up closing it. I think it was like a 94K deal. And then after they signed, which is the best part, is he emailed me and he was like, hey man, just wanted to thank you again for the book. I have a ticket to Gary Vee's wine event, and Gary Vee has his own wine brand in New York City. And he was like, I can't make it. Would you want it? So I was like, yeah, I'll take it. And I took his ticket. I went by myself, and I met Gary Vee and told him, and it was like really cool. I got a picture with him. And it just goes to show you that like, and I said this on Mateo's podcast, but like, you know, he could have asked anybody. He could ask friend, coworker, colleague, literally anybody, and he you know, offered the ticket to an SDR. So, you know, people can say we're spamming, we spam people, or you know, salesmen, whatever it is. We actually are making like quality connections with people, and the fact that, you know, this guy just chose to give an SDR his ticket, it goes a long way.
I gotta ask, how do you find people's addresses to mail them stuff?
Yeah, this is pre-COVID, so I sent it to his work address.
Okay.
It's a little difficult now, to be honest, with direct mail. If it's a sales cycle I'm working, I'll just ask them for their preferred address. However, for like cold outreach, it's really hard to get a direct mail. Some platforms like PFL offer links
Sendoso, right?
Or Sendoso as well too. Yeah, Sendoso does it, where they can confidentially put their preferred address in a link. It's a little bit harder to get them, and it kind of kills that wow factor of like, well, I wasn't expecting this. So it's a little bit more challenging right now.
Reginald has a question here. How do you prospect into an international market? Do you have any experience doing so?
I personally don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't really either.
Sorry about that, Reginald.
That's a good question. We'll get back to you on that one. So, Risa, does that mean you're going to be sending your Britney Spears video, DMing it to Britney Spears, and then somehow y'all can collab on a TikTok then?
I should, honestly.
That'd be awesome.
I should do one of those, pay for one of those cameos and like sing something there.
Why not?
Reply.
Awesome. So I don't want to take too much of your guys' time. Risa, Vin, thanks so much for taking some time and just sharing your expertise. I hope everyone here found this helpful, and I guess for anyone that wants to like connect with you or ask you like any other questions, where can they best find y'all?
Go ahead, Vin.
Vincent Matano on LinkedIn. I think it's Vincent Matano on Twitter too. Pretty active there. And you guys can check out my podcast, Project Growth. It's actually not a sales podcast. It's I actually started in college, and it's more or less just interviewing individuals that I sort of either look up to in a way, whether it's in whether it deals with like entrepreneurship, or I had like a comedian on last time. It's I like to learn from like, I think things outside of sales kind of influence me, so that's kind of the way I learn. But add me on LinkedIn, Vincent Matano.
Nice. Risa?
Yeah, LinkedIn for me as well. Risa Khamsi. I think the spelling should be in my little window. My name is a little not common, I guess. But yeah, that or YouTube. You can just search my name on YouTube and you can see my wacky kale video, amongst other things.
I'm going to subscribe.
Thank you.
Love it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Special thanks to Bao, Bruno, and Reginald for sticking all the way through the end here. I'll let you all enjoy the rest of your day here, and thanks so much.
Well, thanks for hosting, Mateo.
Thanks,
You
Mateo.
got it.